Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 188 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, CEO, co-founder here at Thoughtium, and I am joined by Aishani Gupta, who is a director here at Thoughtium. We want to welcome everybody to this weekly episode of Navigating Now. We go live every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock Central. We want to particularly thank and welcome our LinkedIn community who joins us week over week to talk leadership, to talk strategy, which we'll be focusing on today, and to talk all things getting better as professionals in today's world. So today's episode is all about unlocking the strategic potential in your teams. We here at Thoughtium have been doing more and more work in the strategy design space, helping organizations really clarify and articulate their future strategy, and more importantly, personalize it, make it real, make it exciting for their organizations. And so today we're going to be really unpacking what is a tried and true offering for Thoughtium by the name of the Strategic Blueprint. And for those who haven't been close to our work here at Thoughtium, one of the things that we love to do is help organizations and teams within organizations build very unique identity and direction. And we do that through a very proven process by the name of the Strategic Blueprint process. That we have brought a myriad of our different clients, both small and large. So Aishani, please say hello and introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Aishani, and I'm a director here at Thoughtium. And I think I'm really excited to be here right now speaking about one of my favorite topics and one of my favorite pieces of work that I do here at Thoughtium, which is around strategic planning and really enabling our clients to bring in their teams into this process as well. So the strategic blueprint process.
I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the strategic blueprint. This is an offering that really sits at the center of our strategic planning, our strategic thinking as teams. Aishani, why is this work in strategy and strategy design become so relevant for our clients over the course of the last 12 to 18 months?
Well, Anthony, typically we've always worked with teams that undergo a lot of change. You're a new team, you're perhaps a new leader of a team, and you really need to level set on why are you here and what do you do? Mm-hmm. But off late, I think we've been seeing a lot of our clients, especially the larger clients, where companies are going through a lot of change. And when I talk about change, this is like a lot of restructuring, a lot of globalizing as well. Yeah. And that has almost needed a lot of teams within these organizations to recalibrate and rethink who are they, who do they serve and what's the work they do. And I think a great example very recently, a team that we worked with was this learning and development team at this big company that had this amazing strategy, mission and vision statement, legacy statement for almost 10 years. But owing to just changes within the company and how they were operating, they no more serve just the American market. Now they serve the global organization. That needed them to kind of come back to the table and think about, okay, we need to rethink who we are. We need to rethink what our North Star is, what our goals are. Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing a lot of that happen across the board.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll touch on maybe what strategic planning is and is not, what we all are maybe accustomed to when we step into a strategic planning process, whether you're a part of a team or a leadership team, is typically a long, arduous process that involves a lot of content. It involves a lot of benchmarking and discovery. It maybe involves bringing a large vendor in from the outside to kind of bring those insights in. And ultimately, strategy ends up being a 60 or 70 slide deck that leaders and their team members maybe have a really hard time articulating on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, yeah.
So our focus with the strategic blueprint is to really focus in on the most meaningful components to your strategy, your mission, your vision, your long-term goals, and your ways of working. These are statements and groups of statements that will stand the course of the next 2 to 3 years. They are also statements that oftentimes then take on or lead the identity of the team.
Yes.
So there's a bit of a branding component to it. And we'll talk in a bit about how we challenge our customers to really converge on these extremely meaningful, high-impact statements and how it might be different, again, from the type of strategic planning that we are used to. So more on that here in just a moment. One of the things that we say Aishani, as we work with teams and leaders in the strategic blueprint process, is that strategy should be an experience. What do we mean by that?
Anthony, I go back to that piece of very often we've known strategic planning or strategy to be the 60-page slide deck that sits somewhere with someone on their desktop. When you're talking about making strategy accessible, it's something that is everyone at every level of the organization can speak to. It's also really important that there is a connection, that every person on that team feels included and involved in both the creation but also the sustenance of that strategy. And that becomes extremely important where when you have a mission and vision statement, it needs to connect with your personal why. It needs to connect with your personal work, because that's the only time you can truly service that strategy and that vision and mission of the team. And I think that is what it means to make it an experience, making it inclusive, getting people in a room, getting them to think about what are you most excited about this piece of strategy.
Yep.
How does this pull through in your day to day as well?
Yeah, I love that. And again, maybe differentiating the SBP process with maybe the experiences that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
You take one aspect of the strategic blueprint process. We call it bringing the outside in. This is where we ask everybody on the team to come to the table with those trends or those insights that they feel will have the most impact on the team strategy over the next 2 to 3 years. So this is one example of how, we as an outside partner do not come in with all of the answers. We create the space and design an experience for folks to step into that conversation in a meaningful and exciting and interactive way. I think, as Aishani mentioned as well too, we believe that strategic planning should be very personal. At the end of the day, if we strike the right strategy, it not only resonates with us as individuals, we feel more connected to our team or our organization, but it then becomes a very consistent message then that is delivered across the organization around how will you engage with this team? What are some of the ways that this team will support and enable the organization? So it should add real color and clarity. And in order to get there, you've got to truly create the space for people to, again, converge on the most meaningful statements. And one of the ways that we do that is we apply a bit of constraint.
Yes.
So, along this process of developing your mission, your vision, your long-term goals and ways of working, we follow the design thinking principles of both divergent and convergent thinking. So along the process, there will be an opportunity for you to create as much choice as possible, put as many big ideas on the table around, your mission and your vision. We then make sure that the experiences are designed such that you are immediately then put into a place of convergence. How do we whittle down to the most meaningful statements that best represent our team? So, Aishani, tell us a little bit about how you've seen the power of constraint really fuel the strategic blueprint process.
Absolutely. I think, what do we call it? The constrained creativity, almost.
Yep.
So I think when we talk about making strategy accessible, right, and we talk about strategy being on a page, it's extremely important that it has complete clarity and focus, which is why it's extremely important that your mission and vision statement is not a 3-line statement that you need to read off of a cue card, but it's something that's memorable. That's something you can almost refer to in a conversation when you enter a meeting with a stakeholder. You're able to kind of just, it should roll off your tongue. And which is why one of my favorite parts of this process is the constraints that we have. A vision statement that's less than 5 words, so which is aspirational and yet attainable, but it almost is like it's a little bit of that branding element that makes your strategy very conversational as well. Having a mission statement that's less than 10 words, because really, like you need to be able to kind of work through, should I say, like the buzzwords and the fluff to really focus in on what do we do? Can you explain that to me in 10 words? And we've seen that be extremely successful when teams are trying to really communicate their value, who they are, what they do, and they're entering meetings. It allows them to pull their strategic elements in these meetings and in these conversations. So, which is why I think we kind of approach it with this mentality of like, let's work with constraints to really converge to what's truly valuable.
Yeah, those are often the most like uncomfortable,
Yes.
the most uncomfortable kind of spaces of this experience, but oftentimes lead to the biggest ahas. The biggest moments of clarity and color for these teams. So I'll give a couple of great examples. We're working with an organization currently that has developed a vision statement of next generation customer experience. Now, this is an extremely powerful statement that this organization is making in terms of what they want to provide their customers. This idea of next generation customer experience. In order for this team to really create and step into a vision of that magnitude, we've got to challenge this team to step into the shoes of the customer and really vet out like what does a next generation customer experience look and feel like for our customers. So even more a reason why strategy should be an experience, because oftentimes we're converging on these extremely powerful statements, and we've got to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And we've had teams that have come up with 2-word vision statements, right? That are far more meaningful than having to read 17 sentences off of a cue card.
Totally.
And so that's a really unique and differentiated part of the strategic blueprint process. The shorter you get, the more meaningful it gets, the more high impact it gets, and the more recall you get across the organization. It almost becomes that branded statement. So constraint is a real key ingredient to the strategic blueprint process. Yes. One of the other things that we say to all of our clients that are stepping into developing long-term strategy for their teams is that strategy is only as good as the way you communicate it. So tell us a little bit more about that mantra. Strategy is only as good as the way you can communicate it.
I go back to this concept that we just discussed, right? If your strategy is a 60-page deck that sits on the desktop, you're not really talking about it or communicating it. So the success of your strategy, I think, really hinges on the leader's ability, but also the team members' ability to communicate it and to speak to it internally, vertically within your team, but also horizontally. Are you able to speak to your strategy when you're meeting with a cross-functional stakeholder? And which is why your strategy is only as good and as successful as your ability to speak to it and to communicate it forward. Because what that allows you to do is, one, I think we all know when you're able to kind of communicate something or speak to something in really succinct ways, in conversational ways, you truly understand it well. Mm-hmm. You're able to make very deep connections with the work you're doing. You're able to prioritize also that, does this truly serve the long-term goal I have in our strategic blueprint? And you're able to suddenly make real-time connections in conversations, in meetings, which truly ensures the success of the strategy as well. And another very big part of that, what we've seen, is the moment you bring in an element of branding in that, right? It helps it stick. It makes it more fun. It makes it more accessible across teams as well. So truly, your strategy is only as good as you're able to communicate.
Yeah, it's such a great mantra. And it also then becomes this litmus test as we move through the process, from bringing the outside in to striking your mission and your vision to your long-term goals and your ways of working. Every step of the way, we make sure that there's a gate. And that gate is, can everybody on this team that's involved in the strategic blueprint process speak to, or what we call headline, what we just created? And if we cannot confidently speak to or headline without the slide notes, and again, without the long Word doc, then we don't move on to the next phase in the process. And so the Thoughtium team has a handful of activities that allow teams that are going through this process to creatively speak to the content as if they were bringing it to a new stakeholder, as if they had a meeting with the CEO. And we make sure that we develop tools, as Aishani mentioned, that enable that their confidence in being able to speak to the strategy. One of the tools that we create is that as teams go through this entire process, it lives on a single page visual that is professionally designed from our design team that has a branded component to it. We call that the box top. We say that oftentimes, we find ourselves and our teams pushing around puzzle pieces, but how often do we create a true box top for our teams and our organizations? And so we create that box top in a very creative, kind of high fidelity, branded, and well-designed approach. And that then becomes the visual anchor for your strategy that you can put in front of key meetings, that you can send to stakeholders. And again, that doesn't need to be dug out of an archive on your desktop. So your strategy is only as good as the way you communicate it. And in order to do that, oftentimes that means bringing a trusted partner in to help create the space for really effective communication of your strategy.
Yes.
And that's the work that we love to do.
Absolutely.
So, Aishani, today we reviewed the strategic blueprint. We talked a little bit about how strategy should be an experience. And if you find strategy being arduous or being done in a vacuum, or the output of your strategy being a 60-slide deck, then you might want to pause and say, is the work that we're doing here truly an experience? Is it something that we can all communicate? And most importantly, is it something that we can all really, really get excited about, really enroll in? Does it become a rallying cry for our team? And these are all wonderful questions that you can be asking your team. And if you've got an opportunity or questions for us to chat about your strategic planning, please feel free to reach out to us. You can get a hold of me, Anthony at Thoughtium.com, Aishani at Thoughtium.com, or you can check us out at Thoughtium.com/SBP to learn more about the strategic blueprint process. Aishani, last question. You have been facilitating the strategic blueprint process now for 2+ years, correct?
Yes.
You and I have been the kind of Batman and Robin in many of these spaces. As a practitioner, this is some of the most agile and creative facilitation that we can do. What's your favorite part about facilitating the SBP process?
The fact that strategic planning doesn't need to be an arduous process. You can have fun through it. And I think that's what I enjoy the most when we work with our clients. It's just this element of you can be in this space of continuous movement, but also creating this amazing output that looks good, feels good, reads beautifully.
Yeah.
And I think that's it gives me a lot of joy to see that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't have said it more. And when we create that kind of fluid creative process, my favorite part is seeing our clients have these incredible aha moments.
Yes.
And usually it is through that convergence and through that constraint where they say, yes, that is it. That is what our team exists to do. And that is where we're headed in the next 2 to 3 years. And those are the moments that we live for here at Thoughtium. So we want to thank everybody for joining today's episode 188. It's all about enabling your teams to find fun ways of bringing strategy to the center of your work. We want to thank everybody joining us today. We go live every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central. You can find this episode and all future episodes at Thoughtium.com/live. Have a good rest of the day and a wonderful end of the week.